Hello, are you here to debate?
Yep.
Okay, what's your name, age, and pronouns, please?
My name is Nick, and he, him.
And your age, Nick?
Pronoun. Oh, my age is 18.
Okay, and what topic on the board did you want to talk about today, Nick?
I want to debate. Sorry, I can't see it. I want to debate the Christian gods, evil / not real.
Okay, are you a Christian, Nick?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Feel free. Go ahead and start.
Okay. Yeah. Like, my first premise would be, of course, I guess the probability. I'm guessing you're an atheist, right? Or
Yes.
agnostic. Okay. Yeah. Like my first probability, like claim would be like the origins of the universe, and of course the probability of us being a thing, right? Are you aware that like that number is like larger than a Googleplex, right? It's like so many zeros. So by that logic, I would say that being an atheist is just as much fictional as it is, for example, being someone who is religious or
Sure.
adheres to the
Nick,
book.
let's say that you're correct, and let's say that the probability of the origins of the universe, of life, of all these things is astronomical. How does this prove a
Yeah.
god?
Well, then it proves a God because, well, something had to have generated this series of events for us to be here, like
Sure, why did
generating
that
the
something
Big
have to
Bang.
be a god?
Well, wouldn't something that creates, well, us, like, be held to a higher standing than us? Wouldn't that be called a
Why?
God just by that
Why would
logic
it?
alone?
Like, there's just as much
Yep.
evidence that you're claiming of a god being it that there could be for, like, let's say, I don't know, an alien species that's just like far more advanced, starting us in a petri dish somewhere and us blowing up. There's about an equal amount
Well,
of
Peter.
evidence of the god as there is of like the universe just like starting itself, right? Like when you're telling me that you believe in God, and you're a
Yep.
Christian, so you believe specifically in the Christian God, and the reason you
Yep.
believe in the Christian God is because the universe is complex, and it probably would have, like, I don't know, it's really hard to try to understand where the universe came from. That's not a convincing argument. That's just you saying, like, I don't know where else it could have come from, so I went with God.
Well, the reason why is because again, if even if well, what you said, like even if like well, that person, like whoever did it wasn't uh I guess what we would call God or something like that. Just by the fact that they were able to create, that alone would put them in a higher ontological standing than us human beings, right?
What is it? How
So
does that make
that's
them a
what.
God?
Well, because the fact that they could create, like, create human life and, well, create planets, create a universe, like, wouldn't that,
Well, wait.
like, be,
Why do I have to believe that they created planets? Like, right? What they could do is they could have created the Big Bang. They could have started like the chain reaction, and then everything else after that, random chance. We're not even
I
the
mean,
only. We're not even the only planet in our solar system that's in the habitable zone. Like Mars could have and probably did have life on it prior to it losing its atmosphere. So like it's not like it's so
y-
random that like humans could be the only thing living. We're just the only thing. We're just the only creatures that we know about.
that's true, but, like, usually, like, the standards kind of get twisted a little bit when it comes to human life. Like, for example, like, when they say life on Mars, it's like probably some algae or bacteria or something
Yes,
there.
right now there is, we don't know what existed on Mars prior to Mars losing its atmosphere. We know there was water. We have a lot of strong
Yep.
evidence that Mars had water. We have strong evidence Mars had an atmosphere that could sustain life, but we don't know what was there because we weren't alive, and we haven't found any evidence of anything else being there yet. But this doesn't mean that there couldn't have been. So like when we're saying like, hey, it's so complicated. In order for humans to have shown up, there must have been some intelligent creator that did this. I would just reject this because there's no evidence for that. We're just filling in it. We're doing a God of the gaps argument. We're just filling in something we don't know about with a God, which I would just
I,
reject that.
I feel you. Again, like the God of the Galaxy argument, I can see how that's applied here, but like how's it like? Would you see it as an appeal to authority when you see people like of course, the late Stephen Hawking, like alluding to the fact that there could possibly be like a creator, right? And he was like the most genius minds of our time,
No,
basically.
because Stephen Hawking is also just making a guess, right? He's not
He is
saying that
making,
he's not saying there's a creator because he has some type of like irrefutable evidence that there's a creator. He's also saying that it's possible there could be because we don't know. We don't know what started the universe. But I'm sorry, like even if we want to get into the weeds, like even if you're saying, well, there was a God, but also, hey, there was this specific God, right? You believe in a
yeah.
specific version of God.
Yep.
So not only do you now have to provide evidence that God exists, you have to provide evidence that it is your God that you are talking about. And I just think that saying that nothing else could have created the universe is not a convincing claim. How do I know it wasn't like a plate of
Well,
spaghetti that did it?
well, fair enough, fair enough. But that was just like, I guess, the something to warm you up or warm us up, I guess. But yeah, like the main thing I want to talk about is, of course, like the prophecies, right? The
Okay.
prophecies found in the Bible, right? If you look, I think it's Amos chapter 9, verse 15, right? Like you hear of this everlasting prophecy, right? Like for example, of Israel always being a thing, right? If you told someone like during like for example when Jewish people were a diaspora, even in the first millennium, right? First millennium when they were in Europe or in the Middle East or in different countries, right? Many of them, right, wouldn't have believed you, right? And the fact that Israel is always a long-standing country and it's still there till this day, that alone proves
Well,
that all
no.
kinds of
I would say if this is the case, if we're saying that one of the prophecies is that Israel will always exist, then I would say God was
Yep.
like dead wrong. Israel didn't exist for Israel as it is today didn't exist until the 40s.
Of course, it didn't exist till the 40s. You're right, but if you read, I think again, if like the verse, it says that basically like
I will
once
plant
they,
Israel in their own
yep,
land, never again to be
yep,
uprooted from the land I've given them.
uprooted,
They were
yep,
uprooted for a long time. They were uprooted.
they were uprooted.
He said that
They
he
were.
said they would never again be uprooted, and they were uprooted. So he lied about that.
He did. Well, sorry. Oh man. Okay, now he didn't lie because at the end of the day, there was constant Jewish presence. There wasn't a lot of
There
it, right? But
he
if you
said
read, I
Israel
think, yep,
specifically. He didn't say Israelites. He didn't say I will make this people and this people will constantly be in this area. He specifically said Israel, like as a nation, as a place, and it didn't. And he said never again to be uprooted, and it was uprooted. So either God lied or God
yep.
was wrong. There's only one way to
Well, first of
interpret that.
no, no, not really, because when we're talking about Israel here, like there's usually this interchangeability between the people of Israel and of course Israel itself as the nation, Eretz Israel, right? I think that was making an allusion to, of course, the people of Israel, right? Jacob,
Okay,
right? That's
if
that's
we're
yeah,
just saying that when it comes to this verse that God created
yeah,
people created like Israelites and those people still exist. Okay,
yeah.
Egyptians still exist. Greek people still
Well, not
exist.
really.
Roman people still
Not,
exist. Like what?
not really, not really, because for example, the Egyptian people, right? They have no, for example, connection to their ancient language. The Romans,
What?
Italians don't speak Latin anymore. Maybe in terms of liturgical, like maybe while reading their Bible or stuff like that.
What does that
But
have to do? What
Greeks,
does that have to
like
do with
yeah,
anything? Their people are still there just because they don't speak the language anymore. Languages can die and come and go as like throughout a
yeah.
lot of different things. What does it matter that they can't speak the language?
Well, because the thing is, the standards shown in the Bible shows that, like, for the Jews to be the Jews, they must keep their customs, right? Specifically, the Jews of Israel, right? If they, because there was a lot of Jews that assimilated to their diasporas, like the Hellenic Jews and stuff like that. But the very fact that they've managed to preserve their culture, their religion, and a lot of their customs that they had before even the Second Temple destruction shows, in my opinion, that uh, God's everlasting covenant with Abraham.
So
Right? And to me,
your proof of God existing, or your proof of the Christian God, is that
yep,
Jewish people didn't
yes.
do away with their customs, and so God must be real because these people still maintain a language and culture that existed at that time period.
Well, not only that, of course, the fact that they've actually been able to enter their land. Keep in mind, if there was no Israel,
What do
right?
you mean
Like,
able to enter their land? You told me it's not about the land, it's about the people. So what does them being able to enter their land have to do with anything?
Well, I'll start with this. If you read Zechariah chapter 8, right, that prophecy would have been null and void if there was no such thing as a land called Israel, right? It basically talks about like Israel will one day, once they get their Messiah, and God will dwell amongst them, and the old men will be able to, like, it's basically telling us about a peaceful period. If Israel didn't exist, that wouldn't have happened. The truth is, like, even if we were to look at it half a millennium ago or 1,000 years ago, our conversation would have been some far-fetched imagination, because those lands were either conquered by, for example, the Muslims, right, or even the Christians, right? Which I would even make the argument that when it was conquered by Muslims, it was much more of an realistic than, for example, the Christians, who were basically butchering Jewish pilgrims that were making their way to the land like 24/7.
Yeah, so this doesn't really seem to be evidence of a Christian God. This more seems evidence that, like, Jewish people were able to maintain a culture of customs. Why does God have to be at the center of this? Right? It seems like we're jumping between a few different things. You're saying it's not about the land, it's about the people. And because the people were able to maintain a specific culture and maintain customs throughout thousands of years, that this is evidence of a God. But there are tons of cultures and people that have maintained cultures and languages and practices throughout thousands of years. So how is it proof? Oh, sure.
Let me pull up this modern period.
Let me pull up a few. Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So how many do you want?
Well, any. You could give me one, and I'll take it.
Sure. China has a culture that has existed for thousands of years, and has maintained practices and languages for thousands of years. So are Chinese people also the promised people?
The reason why, of course, like Chinese people are of course not the promised people, is because in the Bible it's specifically, like, again.
Yeah, but wait. You're using the Bible is the claim, right? So to say that the Bible is the claim and also the evidence to support the claim doesn't really work. You need evidence outside of the Bible to support the claim, because the Bible is the claim. The Bible is what is claiming that the Christian God is God.
Well, I'm making the reason why I'm making that claim is because I'm saying, okay, I'm working my way from the top to the bottom. So I'm basically like, okay, these are the claims set by the Bible. If it weren't true, then, like, this would be it. This won't work. This won't work. This won't work. I'm saying that the very fact that a state of Israel exists, that alone makes the Bible true. But not only that, there's other evidence.
Yes, but again, your evidence was wrong. In Amos 9:15, God says, "I will plant Israel in their own land," which is him saying, "I will put Israeli people into a land that is their own, and that land is their own, that is their land." He then says, "Never again to be uprooted." But we know for a fact that Israeli people were uprooted from that land. He says, "Never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them." That is him very specifically saying they will never be removed from that land. They were gone. They were gone for hundreds of years. So my question is, did God lie about this, or was he wrong about this? And if either of those are true, it disproves the God of the Bible, because the God of the Bible is supposed to never lie. Supposed to not lie, and he's supposed to know everything. So he shouldn't be able to lie, he shouldn't be wrong. But he very specifically says, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them. And they were.
Well, the thing is, I don't see it that way. And the reason why I'll tell you that is because Jewish people have maintained presence even before.
What was the land? What was the land? What was the land that God gave the Israeli people? What land was it?
The land that, of Israel, basically, right? Or the land that wasn't it belonged to the Canaanites, or the land of the Canaanites. And well, the landscape is like of multiple modern different countries. Like if we're talking about biblical Israel, but yeah.
Yeah. What land was it?
I don't get what you mean by that question. Like, what do you mean what land it was?
Okay. So he gave specifically, it was the land from between the Nile River and the Euphrates River.
Yeah. So that's pretty big. Yeah.
He said he was giving this land specifically to Israel, never again to be uprooted. But they were.
They weren't.
They were.
Because if you look at it, how so? Can you tell me why?
Because they didn't have control of that land for quite a while.
They didn't. Of course, they didn't have control of that land for quite a while.
So that's being uprooted. That's being uprooted,
not
my
really,
friend.
Because they maintain presence. Like
okay, let me ask you a let me ask you a let me take an example. Were Native American indigenous people uprooted from their lands?
No, because we still see them, but they were conquered, right? Or they were a big.
They weren't uprooted. You're saying that indigenous Americans were not uprooted from their lands?
No, because I could still see some. Like you can still see some in reserves, or whether it's
okay. So so as long as there's still a presence of some people there, it's okay. So it would be okay if I were to say abolish the state of Israel, give that land back to the Palestinians, and just let Israeli people live there.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be removing Israeli people from their land. That would just be.
Well, no. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. You'd be right. It wouldn't be. But the thing is I only made that argument when it comes to the land of Israel and it being called Israel. Because of Zechariah 8. If you read Zechariah 8, I'm saying that if the land was called anything else, let's just say it was called, Palestine, right? We'll call it that, right? That land would, Zechariah 8 won't work. It won't work because clearly the state needs to be sovereign and it needs to be called Israel for
but it wasn't.
To dwell.
It wasn't for hundreds of years.
Yes,
it wasn't sovereign. It wasn't sovereign for Israeli people. It was not called Israel. So which is it?
Yep. Well, I'm not, again, like I said, the fact that today, now we can say, oh, they actually have their land. I'm like, oh, shoot, that prophecy ended up, coming, like it ended up being a thing at the end, right? It wasn't some far-fetched. That's why I said it. Like if we were talking about this 1,000 years ago, this would have been imagination. This wouldn't have been even a conversation to be had, right? But the very fact that in the 21st century, we're able to say, oh, these people are now alive and now a thing. Now we can get this prophecy jump started.
It just seems like you're cherry picking the words of God, and you're saying that I know what God said, but here's what God actually meant. Well, God doesn't speak really in metaphor, because metaphors would be considered a version of like a tall tale or not being as truthful. God's very direct in what he says, right? If God is saying that these people will never be uprooted from their land, and they were uprooted in such a way that they had to get other countries together to give them back their land, which I don't necessarily believe was theirs, but arguing from your point of view, that would have been an uproot. That would have quite literally been an uprooting.
It wouldn't have been an uproot because I'm telling you before I'm telling you before the state of Israel of today. If you look back then, if you looked at a lot of covers, flags and stuff like that, a lot of them had the Magan David, or the Star of David. Basically,
what is the relevant? What does that matter?
because I'm saying that at the end of the day, they clearly had some sort of presence in there to be able to influence, like
What the
the
Star
fact that,
of
oh, yo,
David? The
that
Star of David isn't only for Israel. Israel chose that
it is.
star. No, it's not.
It is. Who
No,
else
it
in the land is
isn't.
using that? Who?
Wait. Israel chose that star because it's of its significance to the Jewish faith. They didn't say
Okay, that's
we're
exactly what
going.
I said.
Nope, you don't understand. You don't understand what I'm saying. The reason why they
Mm,
use the Star of David is because of its significance to the Jewish faith, not because
mm.
it means Israel all the time, every time it's used.
Of
When
course
the
I know that.
Nazis brandished the Jewish people with the Star of David, it wasn't them
Yeah,
going, these are all Israeli people, because Israel didn't
of
exist
course.
as a country. It was them saying this is a symbol important to the Jewish faith, so we're going to use it to mark that these people are Jews.
Of course, of course. Like that goes without saying. Of course, the symbol itself belongs to the Jewish people, but the people within the land who happen to have been Jews, they also consider themselves Israelis, and we know this because we have coins from back then talking about. And keep in mind, like that, the land wasn't even called Israel, of course, before the land was called Israel, right? It was called the land of Palestine. But every time the land was called the land of Palestine, if you looked at the coins, it always says Eretz Israel, land of Israel, land of Jacob. That was always what it was being called.
Yes,
So I'm
but
saying the presence has.
again, you're just proving to me that people were uprooted. You're just proving this to
No,
me. If you're going to say these people should have never been uprooted, right? This is what God is saying. God is saying specifically, he says, never again to be uprooted. These people will not be uprooted from this land. But you're even confirming to me that there were a bunch of people who identified as the group from this land who weren't there because they were gone. They were uprooted from that land. They didn't have
they
control of
weren't
this land
gone.
anymore.
Dude, they weren't gone. Come on,
What?
you already know my definition.
How
You
the
know
fuck
my
did they get to
definition of
Germany
uprooted.
and Poland and Russia and all these other
Well,
places?
of course, a strong amount of them were like sent there, but I don't think you understand when people were talking about uprooted, especially in Amos chapter 9, verse 15. Like, if you seen what the Babylonians did to the Jews, a lot of them, like, they were damn near like extinction levels because they were being sent to Babylon, whilst the Babylonians were just taking
Do
charge
you
of their land.
believe
Their
that the
land was
only
damn.
way do you believe that the only way to uproot someone from a land is if nobody from that group that you uproot is there anymore?
Yes, that was
And
my
that's
standard
just
all the time.
yeah, I'm sorry, that's just ridiculous. So
Oh, okay, fine.
I guess
Yeah.
slaves from Africa were not uprooted from Africa because there were still some African people there.
Well, I would say yes and no. Yes, because of course the ones that were uprooted, yes, they did get uprooted. But as far as the land that
Okay, so
completely
wait, if people were uprooted
yeah,
from that land, then that would hold. It doesn't matter if it was all of them. He said never again to be uprooted. If anyone was uprooted, it shows that God was either lying or wrong.
look, man, I'll be honest. It's just a matter of interpretation for this.
It's not a
This
matter of
specific case.
interpretation. Wait, no, it's not a matter of interpretation. What you're doing right now is you're arguing disingenuously. It's not a matter of interpretation. Never again to be uprooted is pretty staunchly clear. It's pretty cut and dry what that means. It means this people
Again,
will never be uprooted, removed from this land, and they were.
they were if we're going by your standard, but if we want to, of course, make this on fair grounds, we'll have to like look at the Aramaic or the Hebrew to actually see if whether our definitions are either true or not.
Okay, what you look at the Aramaic then.
Well, the thing is, okay. How about this? How about I get into my next, I guess my next reasoning, and then that'll be my last one, honestly. My last reasoning, of course, like the Christian God being true, is just the amount of prophecies that Jesus himself said that ended up being true. Like the very fact that the second temple, after he died, right? If you ever heard of like the parables that he's made about how like you know blessed are the people who basically didn't have children and all that stuff, because like the time that will come by when the Romans will sack Israel, like it will come like as soon as he died, and it happened. Right, the temple was destroyed, and he came at a very crucial time where most of us know that without the temple there is no salvation for Jews. There is no salvation for anybody. Right.
Yeah, again, you're just using the claim as the evidence right now, and I just reject using the claim as evidence. It's kind of pointless.
I'm arguing from the religious perspective, and I'm trying to.
Well, no, you're saying that this is true because look at what this tells me. That's not evidence. That's claim.
Well, no. Because if we're looking at history, I'm telling you what happened, right? Like, again, once he died, the temple did get destroyed. Like, we know this in terms of a historical lens, right? We know that the Romans came later, right? And that's from their own writing, not like ours or anything like that. They destroyed the temple, right? And
yeah,
what they
again,
did
this
to them
doesn't prove literally anything. But somebody does want me to move on. So if you want to chat again, you'll have to call in another day.
Take care.
But yeah. Oh my God, that was loud as fuck. Shout out to Jay. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. Please consider liking and subscribing for your daily dose of debates. I post new videos daily, so make sure to hit that notification button so you know when a new one drops. Also, shout out to my YouTube members. Membership starts at $2.99 and helps me to continue making content for all of you. Also, shout out to my Tier 4 members, Gib5500, Ovaltine, Sylvia Snow, Bamji, Kelsey K, Kelsey Dooley, Jake Gorshender, Marceline, Matthew Holloway, Kazim, Vampy, and Yemye. Thank you, members, for your support.